After the fiery meeting in the Oval Office that just happened on Friday with Trump, Zelensky, and, of course, J.D. Vance, what the heck is Zelensky doing saying that an end to the Ukraine war was, quote, very, very far away? Why would he do that? Donald Trump wants to know. He called this out on Truth Social. He said, this is the worst statement that could have been made by Zelensky, and America will not put up with it for much longer. It is what I was saying. This guy doesn't want there to be peace as long as he has America's backing and Europe. In the meeting they had with Zelensky, he stated flatly they cannot do the job with the U.S. Probably not a great statement to have been made in terms of a show of strength against Russia. What are they thinking? This just goes to show you, I think, how intemperate and ill-advised the Zelensky response to Trump, Vance, and really just to the United States was in this recent sit-down, where we are supposed to, fund the Ukraine war endlessly as a humanitarian gesture? We are funding, to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, a war that does not affect U.S. territorial integrity. If anything, has cost the U.S. massively economically. It's not in our economic interests. The only national security interest that you could even begin to argue that it serves for us is that there's one, which is that it is meant to stop Russia from rolling over other European countries militarily, which I think is a fantasy. Look at the trouble they're having in Ukraine. Then there's one that's really quite cynical and bloody-minded, and that is that we are draining Russia's manpower reserves without actually losing any Americans. But that only makes sense if you think that we're trying to prevent, or rather that we're trying to prepare for a war with Russia in the long term, which we are not, or at least we shouldn't be, because that would be insane. There's no reason for us to go to war with Russia. Russia has, $1 trillion economy? This is not a country that we should have to sit around thinking so much about. But the Democrats, as you know, enmeshed U.S. politics with the machinations of the Kremlin and Putin very much in 2016 by saying that he delivered the election to Trump, which was just insane, just crazy stuff. And they made some massive miscalculations. The Democrats did. Joe Biden did. Well, the calculations he made for himself and his family to get millions of dollars from Ukraine, of course, that worked out for them. But for American interests, it was a tremendous blunder, what was done here in Ukraine over a series of many years, and making Putin think that we were going to bring Ukraine into NATO, a military alliance which, let's be honest, exists to hold Russia in check. We're going to add, we were going to add Ukraine into that, and Putin said absolutely not. And so he invades and creates this horrible, bloody mess that we are seeing right now. Why would Zelensky ever say the end of this war is very, very far away? What does he think is gained? They're just going to continue to hold out until what? Look, having quality firearms is a great thing, and having firearms at a price point that's unbeatable, even better. It's where Bear Creek Arsenal comes in. Bear Creek Arsenal is absolutely an all-American company making firearms that are going to be your favorites. And I'm talking pistols, rifles that are upper receivers, lower receivers, absolutely fantastic. Go to bearcreekarsenal.com today. That's bearcreekarsenal.com, and just go pick out a new firearm for yourself. They send it direct to your FFL, no middleman fees or anything like that from their advertising. They are doing great stuff for you. You're going to want to check out Bear Creek Arsenal today. Go to bearcreekarsenal.com. There's if you look at medieval siege warfare, which was really the way that warfare was conducted for a long time, especially when you didn't have standing armies. So there was a limited campaign season. And so if you had a fortified place, a castle, some kind of a fortified palace or a walled city, if you had that, a big strategy was to wait it out. But if the other side, those who were doing the siege had enough supplies and were able to cut you off, eventually they were just going to starve everybody out. You're all going to die. And so if you knew that was likely to be the case and you weren't going to get any reinforcements, better to cut your losses and cut a deal sooner than to continue on with the siege with a lot of people dying on both sides, and that eventually you might face the total annihilation of your city and of your manpower as the siege drags on. So there are huge costs to delay. There are huge costs to getting this wrong. And what has really been gained by Ukraine in the last, call it the last 2 years? The first year of the conflict, you can say they had to stop Russia. Okay, they stopped Russia from rolling over them. Heroic resistance by Ukrainian fighters, did far better than was anticipated, certainly by the Russians. That's into year one. Year two, year three, what has happened? It's just stalemate with more and more death, meat grinder. Let's end this thing. That's what Trump is saying. Let's end this thing. And that requires pressure on both sides. If Zelensky doesn't think that there's pressure on him to end it, well, then maybe he can just continue to bleed out Russia and think he'll get better terms from Russia in a year than he gets right now. No, to bring this to an end now, you need pressure on both sides. You know, it's the guy in, what's that show called? Billions, who plays Axe. He says, nobody ever leaves negotiation happy. And he's being glib, but there's some truth in that. It's not a negotiation if you get everything you want. Putin's not going to get everything that he wants, which is probably all of Ukraine. And Ukraine is not going to get, Zelensky's not going to get everything that he wants. And Trump is there to tell them this. And all this stuff, too, I got to tell you, it really ticks Trump off, and I can understand why, that there's this sort of widespread narrative that Donald Trump is some big advocate for Putin, some Putin puppet. This is just insane. This is some hangover from the Democrats and Hillary in 2016. This is not rooted in any actual reality. You know, he speaks respectfully about Putin because he's the leader of a major country with thousands of nuclear missiles and a lot of oil and energy assets that the global economy is affected by. So, yeah, he's not going to just sit around and talk tough. J.D. Vance pointed this out, the talk tough stuff that Biden did when he wasn't muttering and forgetting where he was. What did that get us? That gets us nowhere. That's nothing. There's so many people for whom the Ukraine issue has just become either stop Trump at all, just oppose Trump at all costs. So they don't even care who's done what and what. It doesn't even matter to them. They hate Trump. They know what side of this he's on. He's trying to stop it. And then there's also, so that's on the one side of the issue. And then I think there are a lot of people for whom this is just a big virtue signaling exercise. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. They put the Ukraine flag up and they say, the brave Ukrainian resistance, we have to stop them. They have this very childlike, simplistic view of what's going on over there as Churchill versus Hitler. And it's not Churchill versus Hitler. Russia is not Nazi Germany. This stuff needs to stop. But unfortunately, that has infected a lot of people's minds because the media has been propping that up too, as though that's in any way a reasonable analogy to what's going on. So, yeah, Trump is pressuring Zelensky here. He's saying, we're helping you, but we got to get some kind of a deal done. Let's hear what the deal points are. Let's see if it's reasonable. You do have to say, it feels like Zelensky almost wants to blow the whole thing up because he wants it to continue because he thinks that will be better for him and his country in the long run, which is crazy. All right, look, the global economy, as you know, can change in a heartbeat. Things can happen very rapidly, and you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of this. So that's why when you see gold and the long-term view, gold should be in your long-term view. It increased 30% last year. Now, is it going to increase this year? A lot of indications are yes, but look at gold over a 5, 10, 20-year horizon. It just becomes more valuable as countries print more and more of their own money, especially our country. So this is why it is a good time to add your gold reserves. Birch Gold can help you. Birch Gold, they've helped me out a couple times already. I've added to my gold reserves with them recently. When you talk to the people at Birch Gold Group, they'll offer you a copy of an all-new study on how gold will fare in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, text my name, Buck, to the number 989898 or go online to birchgold.com/Buck. Text my name, Buck, to 989898 or go online to birchgold.com/Buck. I just got to tell you that there's so much unhinged nonsense from the commentariat about what has gone on here. I mean, here's Democrat Chris Murphy of the Senate saying that the White House is an arm of the Kremlin.
What's your reaction to what you just heard from the president's national security advisor? Do you think there's hope of salvaging this relationship with Ukraine?
So it is absolutely shameful what is happening right now. The White House has become an arm of the Kremlin. Every single day you hear from the national security advisor, from the president of the United States, from his entire national security team, Kremlin talking points. For the last week, the White House has been pretending as if Ukraine started this war. That's essentially saying that Poland invaded Germany at the beginning of World War II. There are still facts in this world. And the fact is this: Vladimir Putin is a brutal dictator. Russia started this war. And the entire pretext for that meeting yesterday was an attempt to rewrite history in order to sign a deal with Putin that hands Putin Ukraine. That is disastrous for U.S. national security.
This is nuts. This is embarrassing. I'm sorry that they haven't figured out yet that the Russia stuff is not going to become less insane in time. These accusations against Trump. I've dealt with this so many times. Trump gave the Russians in his first term weapons that Obama refused to give to the Ukraine. I'm sorry, Trump gave the Ukrainians weapons to use against the Russians in his first term that Obama, after the initial Russian invasion of Ukraine, which happened on Obama's watch, refused to give because he thought it'd be too much of a provocation. Because of Trump giving them Javelin missiles, and he pointed this out in the Oval Office, there was a real resistance possibility or capability for the Ukrainian forces against Russian mechanized infantry, tanks, armored personnel carriers. So it's a big deal. Would you do that if you were Putin's puppet? Of course not. Would you expel dozens and dozens, more diplomats than ever before expelled in the post-Soviet era from the United States? No, you wouldn't do that. So many things that Trump did in the past that showed he's not Putin's puppet. He's just reacting in the interests of America and the American people and calling balls and strikes and using carrots and sticks. And this is how adults do this stuff. I know that there's a language of diplomacy that people want to talk about, and it's all about gentility and sitting around at cocktail parties. But ultimately what matters is results. And I think Trump is getting us in a place where we could see a result that is far better than anything we would have seen, certainly if Kamala Harris had been president, and anything that Joe Biden, to the degree that he was even the president, is able to bring about. So let's see where he takes this. The mineral rights deal idea is a way of getting a benefit for the U.S., benefits for the Ukrainians who wouldn't be able to get this stuff, don't have the resources and the ability to get this stuff resourced on their own or mined on their own, and would create a real interest. If we have if the United States has a monetary interest in Ukrainian rare earth minerals, well, then Putin just deciding to roll over with tanks does become our problem pretty quickly, doesn't it? We really care about that. It's interesting to me that Democrats only want to use the U.S. military when it is not in America's interest. This is almost an ironclad rule. Democrats want to deploy the military when it makes them feel good because they've created a feel-good narrative of we are the nice humanitarian people and we're fighting against evil in this way. This is why Clinton sent the peacekeepers into Somalia, which led to the Black Hawk Down incident. This is why Clinton was involved in the Balkans. And this is, Obama and Hillary Clinton involving us in Libya. I mean, you look at all these times, they want to, when Democrats want to use the military, there's no U.S. interest at stake other than people wanting to feel good about themselves, the flexing of muscle and the military industrial complex stock going up. So, yeah, I think there's something to be looked at here with maybe there should be an actual American interest in Ukraine, which would be good for us and good for the Ukrainians. So makes total sense to me. But anyway, you had Chris Murphy there. He's a maniac. And then the Washington Post, David Ignatius. Here he is.
David Ignatius, your response to this meeting, European reaction, and whether or not this was just a complete and total gift to Putin.
So, Mika, Lindsey Graham had it right when he said it was a complete and utter disaster. It was a kind of piece of television that I don't think any of us have ever watched or imagined we would from the Oval Office. The question for me now is whether it's possible to pick up the pieces, and if so, how. It's really striking to look at the reactions 3 days later. The Kremlin is delighted. the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said that U.S. policy is now largely aligned with that of Russia. Can you imagine that? That's the description from the Kremlin of where things stand.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Complete and utter disaster. The Kremlin is delighted. It always comes back to Trump-Russia stuff for them, doesn't it? Because ultimately, Democrats don't think we have any foreign enemies. The only enemies Democrats care about are Republicans in this country because we're an impediment to their power. Foreigners, they can always cut a deal with. They can always sell out their country. They don't really care. The only enemies that exist for Democrats are domestic enemies, which means their political opposition, which means Trump and the Republican Party. And you just see it over and over again. So that's what I have for you on with the update on Ukraine and Zelensky. More tomorrow. Shields high. Next week, I get to do something exciting with my dad, and you're all invited to join us. I grew up in New York City, where my dad made his living researching and predicting the stock market. He was good at it, too. In his line of work, you're a hero if your predictions come true. When they don't, you've got a fair amount of additional homework to do. Thankfully, he was right on the big ones. All of that to say, next week, I'm hosting a video seminar with my dad where he'll make another big forecast on the markets. Write this date down, March 12th at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. It'll be online in video form and super easy for you to register free of charge online. Modesty aside for a minute, my dad created a name for himself on Wall Street by his predicting things in an uncanny way. The most notable, calling the crash of 1987, and then again calling the crash in 2009. His predictions are too numerous to mention, but the latest one comes on March 12th, so register for it online and see us an hour before this program starts that day. To sign up for the free event, go to disruption2025.com. That's disruption2025.com. Paid for by Paradigm Press.